The transient occupancy taxes, presentation by Colin Burns. You got 7 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight I wanted to revisit transient occupancy taxes. As council will remember, the city revisited these back in 2014 and put a possible increase in TOT on the ballot. It failed, so we wanted to take another look at it now that it's been about 10 years since. So transit occupancy taxes are basically a hotel bed tax. It's a tax on the privilege of occupying temporary lodging. It is a stable source of general fund money. There is no cap. It is meant to compensate cities for the increased cost to serve tourists, but it also is a stable source of general fund revenue. There are certain things it doesn't apply to, including state employees and federal employees. I'm sorry, it applies to state employees, but not federal employees on business. Sorry, I'll skip a couple of these slides since there's a time sensitivity. The power to impose TOT includes collection. There are many ways that we can collect TOT, including through business license enforcement, civil actions. There have been a couple of challenges to TOT measures. Most of the time the challenges are unsuccessful, but a couple of the successful challenges I wanted to point out. We need to be very careful in how we draft these. We had a TOT ordinance that got invalidated because the definition of transient was 30 days, whereas the definition of hotel was 90 days, so you couldn't figure out when somebody was actually a transient. One court held that you can tax the imputed value of breakfast included in a room rate. So a hotel was trying to avoid TOT, and they said, well, they pay $100, but 20 of it is because we give them eggs in the morning. So no, you got to pay TOT on the entire amount. The most recent case came out of the Supreme Court in 2016. This was a class action case, and this was an interesting case because it dealt with the online travel companies. So how it works is a hotel has a contract with an online travel company like hotels.com, and they will allow the travel company to rent rooms for a wholesale rate. And then they have another contract that says there has to be a parity. So the hotel will be able to sell it at a wholesale rate, say it's $80, but then they'll have to charge the person an extra $20 to bring the actual cost of the hotel room to what the hotel offers directly to its consumers. So that rate parity, that delta, was what the online travel company would collect in addition to what the actual hotel would collect for the room. The hotels were only paying for the wholesale rate. There was a class action that's filed in California. The court said that hotels have to pay on the full rate, including the rate parity amount. So that was a very helpful case for cities. This has been called a painless tax by the league. No tax is painless, I understand, but it is called a painless tax because the tax is paid mostly by non-residents instead of residents of the city. It is generally imposed as a percentage of the hotel room rate. Some have imposed it as a flat charge. Those are very rare. Voter approval is required. It is a tax. So it can be a general tax or a special tax. As a general tax, it goes into the general fund and can be used for general purposes. That requires a simple majority vote currently of citizens. It can also go as a special tax. Some cities will say we're going to use this tax for the purpose of building up hotel development, so there's a sell point there. If it is advertised as a special tax, it requires a 2/3 majority vote of the electorate. But we also have the California Business Roundtable measure that is currently pending for the 2024 ballot. If that measure changes, revenue for local governments is going to change across the board. It has a number of increased requirements for passing taxes like this tax, including a supermajority vote requirement, and there's also retroactivity. So we could go through a bunch of work trying to get a TOT passed, and then all of a sudden the Business Roundtable measure could pass, and it makes us do the whole process over again if we didn't get a supermajority vote. There is also a court challenge to the Business Roundtable measure, and I believe there's also a legislative response that says that if a measure is going to require a supermajority vote for anything, the measure has to be approved by a supermajority vote.
What's a supermajority?
2/3.
2/3, okay, thanks.
I personally think that any supermajority vote is anti-democratic because anytime you say that 51 of 100 people can say yes, and it still fails, I just see that as a threat to the ability of the majority to do what they want, but that's a side note. The city clerk put together some TOT rates. Rick, do you want to talk on those?
Thanks, Colin. Really quick, this is just so council has an understanding of the rates in Orange County. The high being 15%, which is in Anaheim, Buena Park. The low of cities that actually have a TOT is 8%. The ones that are highlighted in yellow are local surrounding cities. If we were to take the average of all the cities in Orange County, the average TOT is 9.51%. However, that includes 3 cities that do not have a transient occupancy tax. If we pull those out, then that average goes up to 10.79.
Hey, Rick, question on that real quick. Can you go back? Sorry. Does that include, some cities also have an additional fee percentage?
I know Irvine has a special tax. There's an additional 2%. It's
I know, I think Huntington Beach has that as well.
Yeah.
So
This is just their flat.
So for those that don't know, so it's not quite the Chamber of Commerce, but they're Tourism Bureau's taxes that are on top of that. That's not included in
No,
these numbers.
this is just their,
So some of those rates are even higher than
Yes.
we're saying. Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
And then lastly, this is just the revenue that was generated in 22-23 was just over 1.5 million per percentage. That's roughly $170,000 per percent. So if you were to increase the TOT by 1%, it's an extra 170,000, 2%, 340,000. If this is something the council would want to do, we would have to get this approved by council to get it on the ballot prior to August 2nd, which leaves us the second meeting in July as a deadline to bring resolutions forward to add this to the ballot in
Okay.
November.
Anything else we need? Colin? No?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. Were there any requests to speak?
I did not see a request to speak.
Still no request to speak, just making sure? Okay. All right, who wants to go? Anybody want to give a comment before? Any feedback? Councilmember
Sure.
Harper?
Yeah, I think although our TOT is lower than the surrounding cities, I don't think it's the right time to bring it to the ballot. If we're going to do something, I think we should target for 2026. We have more time to do outreach and stuff like that. And the other thing is I think the HH the 2014 was before we passed HH. So I think there was some, I guess, since we've got HH, I don't know if
Okay.
adding another tax would be a good idea. That's my thing.
Councilmember Constantine?
Okay, well, I would be willing to let the voters decide. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Canine?
Mayor, four issues with this one. The voters did disapprove this 10 years ago, and although that seems like a long time ago, I think the sentiment probably is generally the same. TOT is, and I've spoken on this before, it's a fractional portion of our revenue. It's about 2%. I'd be much more interested in looking at property sales tax as a focus for increasing revenue. And then just lastly, I oppose new taxes on principal, so we're taxed enough already. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Bowie?
I have to agree with my colleague, Councilmember Harper. The only reason for is it's probably not the right time. Why do I say this? We don't even know how hotel developers feels about this if we increase this now, because we are trying to bring hotel developer into the city. This may change their mind for them to coming in. I don't have enough data on that. And second, if you mentioned about the there's a bill, I know it's coming up in terms of reference to require 2/3 majority. And what happened? We don't know what's going to happen. So it's a little bit too premature. I think we should wait.
Okay, I agree. I think this is not the right time. It's not the right tax. So right now, I see we have 4-1 against bringing it to the voters. So at this point, I think the direction is let's wait on this. Maybe in a couple of years, we can look at it again. And just for the public to know, where did this come from and how did this come to a study session? Again, we have our strategic planning session, and that was one of the suggestions that came out of it to look at it. So I think we reviewed it, and based 4-1, we're not going to move forward.
And I want to be clear, too, because I don't want to be the one who is all for it. It's not that I'm all for it. I just wanted to let people decide. So my thought is not necessarily that I support the tax, because I know what's going to happen after this meeting. Thank you.
No, I understand. That's why I said you were the only one to support it to bring it to the voters. So I was clear on that. Okay, we're going to take a 2-minute recess, and then we will start the meeting.